we were talking about what athletes would you like to give a do-over to for their career. I said Andrew Luck, right? I'm a Colts fan, and that was such a waste of what I believe to be generational talent. Had he been properly diagnosed by the staff, properly treated by the staff, and given an opportunity to actually stay upright by giving him a fucking offensive line, Andrew Luck could have rattled off a few Super Bowls for Indianapolis. This person came in and said, Dan Marino, never anyone more deserving of a ring who never got one, in my opinion. Yes. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think that Walter Payton was robbed in his Super Bowl, but at least he got a ring. Dan Marino, when I think of every single NFL player that's great that never got a ring, Dan Marino's at the top of that list. Dan Marino is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, period. Somebody's putting ketchup or ranch on something. I heard it out of a bottle. Think about the quarterbacks that you consider to be the greatest of all time, right? People will say like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Joe Montana. They'll start rattling off. Dan Marino's in that picture. The thing that keeps Dan Marino down the list when people have the conversation about greatest quarterbacks is because he never won a Super Bowl. He got there very early, I think what was his first year, very early in his career, and never went back. Yet he was one of the best quarterbacks you have ever seen play the game. I've never seen anybody Jim Kelly for the Buffalo Bills was the only other person I've ever seen that threw the ball like Dan Marino. Dan Marino had such a quick release and such a powerful release that the ball was like slicing through the air. Jim Kelly was made for Buffalo football, in my opinion, right? He had the kind of delivery and arm strength that could force that ball through the swirling winds of Buffalo, New York. Dan Marino had a very similar release. He just didn't have the weather conditions that Jim Kelly had to deal with. And yeah, I can't think of another NFL player that would be more deserving of a ring than Dan Marino. Had he won 1 or 2 Super Bowls in his lifetime, yeah, I think that you would be talking about him up there with the Peytons and the Bradys and the Montanas. When I look at that era, right, Joe Montana and Dan Marino, I know it sounds fucked up because Joe Montana has the rings and Dan Marino doesn't. If I'm starting a football team in that era, I'm taking Dan Marino. I am.